Just recently, I was making this ring for a friend to match an outfit she just bought, and I thought I would also do it as a project to show you. It's a multi-jewel ring, I call it, and you can fit any sized round bead. So if you've got semi-precious gemstone beads that are round, this is perfect. You can mix and match, or you've got glass beads, or you've got little pearls, or anything that's to hand. If it's round, it makes it easier because you're going to make the round shapes. I'm going to use some really chunky wire. I've got some 1.25mm copper wire, and I'm going to bind it with the 0.4mm to attach the beads. And if you've got a ring mandrel, a metal one is better, but anything to wrap around. So we're going to start with the thick wire, and you can use any wire as long as it's 1 mil at least. I think the gauge should be at least 1 mil thick. So start by creating a little circle right at the end, and then just bend that so that it can sit flat on your ring stick as you wrap it around the ring size that you want to achieve. So I'm going to go for an M because that's the size I want. So just wrap sort of 3 complete circles is perfect. Now that little circle I made, I want that at the back, and the rest of the protruding or projecting wire is on the opposite side. And then I'm going to cut at least 6 to 8 inches, leave that projecting to make the focal bit of my ring. So just check the ring fits, and the great thing about this ring, it's completely adjustable because it's got that little circle at the end. It hasn't got a spiky end, and it can be made larger or smaller because it's adjustable on the rings. So now we're going to make the first big loop. So if you've got a bail maker like I have, an 8mm bail maker, you can create a circle with a projecting wire just by wrapping it around a couple of times. But if you don't have that, you can use a pen or pencil, any cylindrical mandrel to wrap around, and curl it around twice. You've got a double loop there, so that's one of the circles that's going to be have a bead inside, and then this is the rest of it is really completely up to you which way you go. So you look at the projecting wire and decide where you're going to put your next circle. So again, I'm going to put a smaller circle next to that one, so I hold it near to that circle and wrap it twice around, and wherever the rest of the wire finishes, you can then create another circle from that point. So there we have one larger, one smaller circle. And as you see, you can use any mandrel. I'm going to use my round nose pliers to get even smaller little circle next to this one. So hold whatever mandrel you're using and then wrap the wire around it a couple of times to create this circular setting for where the beads are going to be set in or woven in. So next thing is, see how much wire. You could stop there and you could create a little spiral with the end of the wire. This is where I'm going to leave it to you. If you want 3 beads on it, you want 4 beads on it, you want 5 beads on it. I feel there's a gap there. So what I'm going to do now is to fill that gap. I'm just going to do a tiny little, another little circle. Well, it's more like a wiggle actually. I think a wiggle will fit better. So it's just to fill that space underneath the larger circle. And then I need to create a spiral with the end. Always create a spiral at the end because that way it's not spiky, and spirals on a ring look so decorative. So just roll that around until you get to your little nest of circles. So there's, you could stop there and that could be your ring. It could be, these minimalist rings now that are just a setting and a shank. That's how you could sort of say, well, this is my minimalist ring. Anyway, I'm just going to hammer the very edge of that spiral to toughen it up a bit. and I'll readjust it right at the end if anything needs adjusting, and I can put it back on my ring mandrel. But at this point, you're just making sure you've got all the settings in the place that you want, and it's going to be sitting at the right point of your finger. So twist it around if you want to have it, and only use the nylon head of your whammer hammer because you don't want to distort and misshape any of the circles you've made. Now I'm going to use the 0.4mm binding wire, and this is where we're going to connect and secure in any beads that you want to add. So I've just collected a few here, and I'm going to decide which ones fit. So first of all, connect the wire to one side of one of the circles. So I'm going on starting with the largest circle because that will be my focal bead. So connect it in and then just wrap it around the side. You just need 2 or 3 wraps to make it completely secure. And if you can leave the binding inside, that's really the best place, because that means it's not going to, poke out and scratch when you're wearing it. So if you can leave the binding on the inside of those circles, that's where it should live. And then we're going to feed on the first bead. So choose one of your beads and check it fits into the gap, into the space. And then once it's sitting in position, you want to just give a little stitch on the opposite side of that circular frame to stitch it in place. So just a couple of stitches or bindings will hold it in there, and that one's ready and set into position. And that leaves the wire coming out just next door to the next circle, which means you can then pop in another bead, pop it into place, make it sit inside. Sometimes if you can find a bead that sits further in, that's better. Mine are just that bit bigger, so they're sitting sort of on top of the setting, but that's still fine. And give a couple of stitches again to the opposite side, and you just keep doing that. So depending on how many little circular settings you've made, you can fill them all in, or you can leave some empty, or you're just going, and hopefully you can just carry on with the one wire going from one to another rather than having to just weave or secure one bead in, then cut it off and then start with another bead. I just try and keep to one wire all the way through, because that's, I don't want to have any cut off ends anywhere. So I'm just filling the gaps. So I'll find another little bead for this tiny little gold bead that will sit nicely in there. As I say, the wire gauge you use for this is really up to you, but I've found if you try and make this out of 0.8, it can feel a little bit too feeble. So I would suggest start with either a 1mm or a 125 for the framework, but the weaving wire is completely up to you. And there you have it. You can carry on with beads or stop there. So I'm just making sure all the beads are woven in place, and this also means that the front of the ring is nice and solid and firm because it's all held together with the weaving, and the beads obviously give it lovely colour. So now I'll continue, I think I'll add a few little beads in those little wiggly bit in the middle. I have to find very, very small beads to fill those gaps. Oh, that's lucky. That one goes in, and probably a little pearl or another little gold bead will fit into the other wiggle. Every time you make one of these, and you'll see all of they always come out slightly different. But what's lovely is you can just use up a real assortment of colors. You could choose a design or color, fabric, and then just, you know, put all those colors together. And as you can see, it's a real, you know, fruit salad assorted color range. So have fun with this project. I hope you enjoy making it to make your own versions of the multi-jewel ring. Thank you for watching.